Well, we love what you guys are doing. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm happy to be around it. Just and to see it to continue to develop.
Yeah, we're excited too, man.
Yeah, I took my daughter this morning, just this morning, to see the mural that your summer camp created, and she went by it, and I said, "Yeah, kids created that," and she said, "Oh, I'd never be able to do that," and I said, "But honey, I've had you paint on parts of the murals that we've done, and things were outlined, and then you filled them in and painted them."
Yeah.
She said, "Oh, yeah, I guess I could do that." And so even within my own daughter, watching that light go on and say, "Oh, I guess I could do that," just this morning, because we drove by your building, is part of it.
And that's a great segue into the mural project as a whole.
Yeah.
So Josh, what is Marion Murals?
It's some paint on some walls at its base. I mean,
Sure.
During the pandemic, initially, I had an idea for a mural in downtown, not necessarily for what was in the mural, but for a placement of a mural. In the alleyway, walking to the Civic Center from the Art Starts building, down Paradise Alley, there was a wall there, and I thought, if there was a mural there and there were some lights on it, it could really make that single walking path as a way to get to the Civic Center a lot more approachable. And that was kind of at the heart of it. And then at the same time, putting up public art within the town with just one mural sounded like a great idea to me as well, as far as the overall purpose of the Marion Cultural and Civic Center, diving in and, installing public art within the community. One mural would achieve that goal. And then the pandemic happened. And all of a sudden, we're not programming hundreds of shows a year. And so we didn't have a bunch of shows to prepare for. We had a lot of time on our hands. And initially, my idea was to commission somebody locally to work on it and to do it. And then at an event we were having, and this is prior to the pandemic, and in my initial concept of it, Sean Vincelette was at an event for the Marion Cultural and Civic Center Foundation, the lawn social they did. And I that was my first time actually meeting him in person. I knew of his artwork, but he and I had never met. And he had a past with the Civic Center. Some of the art classes and drawing classes that he took, which spawned him to become an artist, were in the old Marion Cultural and Civic Center. And so he had a deep connection to it. And so after that event on Saturday or Sunday, no, it was a Saturday. I take it back. It was a Thursday. The next day, he was sitting into Dawn Jackson's class, working with the students in her class for an art day. And my wife was assistant principal there at the time. She's principal there now. Ashley Benson is my wife. And she...
Shout out Ashley.
And so I text my wife and I said, "Hey, is Sean Vincelette there?" And she said, "Yeah." And I was like, "You mind if I come over and talk to him?" She said, "Come on over." And so I knock on the door and I ask him to come out of the classroom. And I was like, "Hey, I've got this idea. I'd love to do a mural. I'd love for your work to be a part of it. Is this something you'd be willing to work with me on?" He said, "Yeah, definitely. Yeah." And we weren't talking about him coming up and painting it. We weren't talking about him fully designing anything at that point. It was a drawing that he had already made that was published online or on Facebook or somewhere, that I had seen, that I was like, that'd be cool to be a part of this, to be one aspect of the overall mural. And the more he and I talked, the more artistically we realized that we were aligned. And he ended up designing a completely new piece and mural for that wall. And during the pandemic, we weren't doing shows. And so he wasn't originally planning, even on designing the full wall, he wasn't planning on coming and painting. And eventually I said, well, I'll paint it. I've never done that before, but hey, we'll jump in and we'll do it. And as we were getting closer and closer to it, he said, you know what? I think I'm going to come up and paint. I said, well, great. And that was a load off of my mind, because I had painted and at the time, all that I had in my mind was, I've worked on some scenery and I've done some painting on some scenery. It'll be fine, surely. Which is a very naive outlook. But
yeah, because the mural, right?
The mural's intense.
The mural scale.
Yeah. It's huge. Because we ended up doing a wall that was 20 by 50, which oddly is the size of most backdrops at the Civic Center. But I had never painted a real backdrop of that size. And so I was going to be biting off a lot more than I could chew. But Sean then saying, hey, I'm going to come up and help with this, gave me the opportunity. And we've talked about this before. It gave me that freedom to fail. That's not my term. That's something that, I don't know if it's his original term, but Ben Folds, in a speech that he gave at an arts conference that I was at, talked about how one of the most freeing things from a creative standpoint is having the freedom to fail. That comes from something that he does live in his concerts, to where he improvises with an entire symphony orchestra to create a new piece in the middle of a show. He said, here's the great part about doing that. Nobody expects it to be good. And so I have a complete freedom to fail at it. But the crowd loves being there as we're creating something. And they're hearing me live call out to sections of the orchestra to play this and to play this and to play this and to give me this and to create this entire piece. And then he improvises lyrics over the top of it. He said, none of it ever has to be good. He said, but good ideas come from it that have led to writing new songs. And those ideas never would have happened without the audience giving me that freedom to fail in front of them. And for me, Sean coming with his 30 plus years of experience as an artist, even though he had never done murals on that scale, me knowing that an artist with that much experience was coming in gave me the freedom to fail. And so I jumped in and just started painting. And I remember telling him, look, I'll fill in spaces. I'll do this, but I'm not going to do these letters. I'm not going to do these fine lines. That's not what I'm here for. And by the end of it, I stopped even asking what I was going to approach and what I was going to paint. And I jumped right into painting letters and painting details and really filling out that mural. Because once a brush was in my hand, it just felt good. Once I was lining something out and I could actually realize I could get a pretty good line, something felt wonderful about that. And within the 10 days that we did that first mural, I had already planned our second one, had already found a site for it. The business owner had agreed to it and agreed to a loose verbal version of a concept. And within a week, we were starting on the Biassy mural.
I remember that community response from the mural in Paradise Alley, and just the overwhelming positivity that was given. Could you speak a little bit about that response from that initial mural?
That was one of the coolest things about working on it, other than like finding myself as an artist as I was working on it, which that was pretty darn cool.
Pretty incredible.
But then hearing from the community, we figured, just loose estimations, over 700 people stopped by to watch as we were painting that first mural. And it's not out in the open. It's like you had to find us. because we were in an alleyway off of the square. And so people sought out to find us and to find what we were doing and to watch it go up. And the community responded in such a way, and it was so positive. The other beautiful thing that came out of it is that we were painting a representation of that corner of the square from 50 years ago. And so you had older members of the community coming and talking to us and telling us their stories from those buildings. And so there's a community storytelling aspect of it. And that happened that was amazing, that I still have a desire to capture somehow. And I haven't, and I need to, because those stories are going to go away. But hearing about, and I think this is one of your favorites as well, hearing about the simple childhood prank in Woolworths of kids would go by and to find a way to get up to the bird cages and to let the birds out in the store. And so I've heard multiple different birds, but we'll say parakeets are just flying around in Woolworths because kids are playing a joke. And that's hilarious. And it's that like quintessential like Americana childhood prank that doesn't hurt anybody, but it's funny, and that you know speaks to the precociousness of the kids, but not in a destructive way. And it's just a really great, wholesome memory that was shared with us multiple times by multiple people, which is why we heard that they were different types of birds from multiple people. And because everybody's memory of it's just a little bit different, but it's of the same thing. And that communal storytelling that was a part of that experience was also so rewarding. I mean, I think we know the entire menu of Parks Pharmacy's diner. Yeah. And it wasn't a diner. They literally just had a lunch counter inside a Parks Pharmacy with a handful of stools on it because it was still a pharmacy. And so, but they had a full lunch menu there. And we heard about that entire lunch menu and everything that was on it, and the different types of shakes and malts that you could get there, and just all these rich community memories. And so hearing that was a great part of what the community saw in what we were doing, is that it was evoking memories, but at the same time, it was a beautifying an area that at that time was somewhat of a blight. And so moving forward from that, while we were planning that first mural, an idea of doing more murals in downtown came about. Allison Hasler came up with the idea of doing more and bringing in artists to do them, and to do a competition, to find a grant to pay for it. And and she, at that point, because I had already been planning a mural and working on a mural, she asked me to be a part of it. You ended up also being part of the overall committee. And so that project kind of took off. But before that project happened, we had multiple murals up in the community before those other 10 came in. And so Allison Hasler and the support of Mike Absher was integral to the further development of that Marion mural project. And Allison oversaw the initial logistics of the artists competition. We opened it up. We worked specifically and directly with the business owners where those murals were going to go up, so that we had a full idea and understanding of what they wanted for their building. And then we created briefs for the artists that said those things and what they were looking for, what style they were looking for, what content they were looking for. So, and then it kind of left it open for the artists to create whatever. And so on the 10 buildings, we had nearly 300 submissions.
Wow.
From over 38 states.
Holy cow.
2 different countries.
My goodness.
In addition to the United States. So we had international submissions. And so we had this amazing outpouring of these artists submitting concepts. And then we had committees within the community of downtown business owners. And then the actual business owner had the ultimate approval or denial of a submission because it was going on their building. And it's on something they own. So they, of course, have the ultimate choice in the end. But they were also part of the committee. And so their input was valued as part of that committee. And so with that, we ended up with 9 buildings in total. One building ended up not part of it in the end for a few logistical reasons. But we ended up with 9 murals being put up by 7 different artists in downtown Marion. And we had artists coming in from LA, from Austin, from Atlanta, as well as local artists. So we had local artists putting up artwork in downtown Marion as well. And so it was a great culmination of both national, international artists and local artists. Because like Das, who had been here, he lives in Austin, but prior to living in Austin, he lived in Japan for multiple years and painted a bunch of murals in Japan. And so you've got that influence that came in, and that's what I'm considering the international part. That came into his design of the pieces that he did in downtown Marion. And so we ended up with all of those things happening. In addition to, after we did that first one and the mayor saw the response on that one, I think he did a Facebook Live while we were down there. And while we were working on the very first mural, he said, within 2 years, you're going to see 20 to 25 murals in downtown Marion. And I think we were all in disbelief that we just heard him say that. Because we hadn't even finished our first one, which at that point was actually the 3rd mural, traditional painted on a wall mural, really the 4th mural. Because there's an architecture firm in downtown that also has one that is painted figures that are painted onto things and then put onto the wall, and then their shadows are painted onto the actual wall. And so it's a kind of a really cool mashup of a mural.
Almost a multimedia mural.
It's a multimedia mural, and it's a mural that actually represents the architects that work there and what they do. And so it's a representation of the business on the side of the business, which is really cool. And so we were really the 4th mural that went up in Marion. But we were the first one in this era of this project.
The resurgence, if you will.
Resurgence. One had not been done for 10 years prior. I think it was actually 2009 when the last mural had been painted in Marion. And so, you're looking at this is fall of 2020. So you're looking at an 11-year gap there. And so whenever that one went up, and we're still in the midst of that one, we're hearing essentially 20 more. And my concept in my mind at that time was, hey, Marion could have 12 or 13 total, and that'd be great.
And that would be a lot considering the work that it took to even do that one in Paradise Alley.
Right. But then, something cool happened within you and I is we both got lit with this artistic bug. And so...
We sure did.
So whenever Matt Throgmorton from Biassy Music walked up and said, I'd love to have a mural in my building while we were working on that one. And I already had an idea in my head of having Louis Armstrong on the side of Biassy within moments of him saying it. I said, what do you think about Louis Armstrong? He said, I think that sounds great. And that was the start of, by the end of that mural in Paradise Alley, I had fully executed a full design for Biassy in its final form before we were finished with that first mural.
Wow.
And you, just in sitting there with me, said, yeah, I'm down, before we'd even finished our first one.
Yeah.
So then you and I, within a week, jumped in and started on Biassy.
Yeah, we sure did. And it's sort of like a fire was lit. You called it a bug, but the response, the feeling of just painting on the wall and
creating something.
Exactly.
And we were creating something where nothing was before.
Public art and something from nothing.
And then it did something really cool to downtown. As we had more and more, the walls that had been multiple colors and hadn't had any care taken with them in years started having public artwork all over them. Because our next project was Union Street Arts Building.
Shout out.
And there were a number of concepts that went through before it became what it is. And I personally, from a design standpoint, which you and I worked together to co-design this one. These two, in all actuality. One overall concept with two murals that meet up on a corner. And I was nervous whenever we finalized our design. Because the first one, it was old buildings that depicted something from downtown that had been lost 50 years in the past. None of those businesses were there anymore, but it created memories. All of the older community loved it for that reason. The next one was Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington. Those are artists that are universally loved.
American icons, legends in the jazz.
Yeah, and so there was no doubt that that mural was going to be loved if it was executed well, and somehow we magically executed it well with it being our second mural. I had a lot of doubts as I started working on it. And Sean Vincelette didn't tell me not to do it. But whenever I sent him the concept, he's like, "Oh, you're going to jump right into doing faces and people, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, I want you to know that's a lot. From an artistic standpoint, getting faces and people right is a lot. And I just want you to know that going in. And after I painted Louis's face for the 5th time, if you remember that.
Yes.
Because the design was fine, but the colors just weren't right. And I kept going up and repainting and repainting. And the other additional part of that is that we were creating representation for the Black and African American community for the first time in Marion. And that community was being depicted and represented for the first time ever. And that's too important to get wrong.
Yeah.
And especially with the skin tones. Because representation matters. And if the representation isn't good, then it is detrimental instead of being a positive. And so we had to get that right. And so I think it was the fifth color series that I put up there to get the skin tones right that finally landed. And we're right on Louis.
Well, you did a great job, Josh.
And then there was the trumpet that was a hot mess. Because we were, we got everything laid out on the wall, and then I couldn't tell what any of the lines were on the trumpet. And so a lot of the trumpet was just freehand painting up there.
And you were mixing those colors by hand as well.
And every color that you see on that wall is mixed by hand. We essentially just got the primary colors of paint and a bunch of black and white and just mixed everything. And there were probably 40 or 50 colors in the end on that.
Wow.
35 to 45, somewhere in there on that specific painting, on that specific mural. And so getting those colors right whenever you're mixing them yourself, had I just picked colors and put them up there and them be wrong, then it would have just been wrong. But luckily we were mixing colors ourselves, and so we could go back and change it. And I learned that from that first one with Sean, because I bought the colors that I thought we needed. And I bought colors of tints that he sent me. And then he started mixing right away whenever he got here for the colors for that first mural. And so on that second one, I said, well, I can do that too. Because color, for me, I had learned color over my 20 years in lighting and scene design. And so the color aspects I felt really good about. Because I knew how to mix color within both light and within pigment. And so being able to come in and just mix the colors all made sense to me because I knew the additive and subtractive properties as far as color theory. And so I felt great about mixing colors and going in. So we just bought base primary colors and mixed everything we needed. And that's been our approach on every mural ever since too. But getting those things right to create that representation point for the community was so important to me. And to not screw it up. And so we did that.
You did it.
No,
we did that. Right. But Louise, you're right. You were working on the majority of those skin tones and making sure again and again and again that you got it right. And it really comes across. You can see that thing from far distance behind.
Yeah.
And you know who it is immediately.
And the combination of skin tones for highlights and shadows is the important thing to get right. Because you've got a very, very, very dark brown into a black on the extreme shadow, all the way to a very pale tone that is the highlight of reflection of light off of Louis' natural skin tone. So you actually have to go much lighter than Louis' natural skin tone to create that highlight. And so creating that broad spectrum to have multiple stages of color to create that transition of light across his face was important. And I felt really good about it in the end. And on Duke as well. And then, and I think the one day that I was doing Duke's eye, and I think I was up on a scaffolding with it. And I did his eye the first time. And I was like, I think it can be better than that. I think there can be more detail in it. I think it could be. And I think we went through 6 or 7 revisions of just Duke Ellington's eye before I finally went back up and painted it like I painted it the first time. And that ended up being the right one.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's the thing with murals. Or painting in general, you can always just paint over it.
Yeah. And that's the way that we started this conversation. There's a lot of paint on the wall, and at its base point, that's what it is. It's paint on the wall. But it's what you do with it that matters. But at the same time, in the approach to it, whenever you think of it that simply, it takes a lot of the intimidation away from it. Because it's just paint on a wall, if you do something wrong, you can cover it up and put more paint on the wall. So that takes a little bit of the intimidation of having to get it right the first time and it'd be absolutely perfect from the moment you put it up there. That approach to a wall kind of takes away some of that intimidation.
And that freedom to fail aspect, you can always just paint over it.
Exactly. And that's a way for you to give yourself a freedom to fail. And to try an eye 8 different ways. Because in the end, I can go back up and paint black over it, and then paint the highlights back in and shape the eye, and then it's done again.
Yeah.
And I got to test out all these different versions of the eye to know for sure this is the right one.
Yeah. And what was it about the Union Street Arts mural that, did you say, made you nervous, made you...
I'm really glad you circled back to that.
Yeah.
Because I went way off on a tangent. So
that's what podcasts are for.
It is. But at the same time, I love the point of this. So I'm really glad you circled back. Because Union Street Arts was the first one that wasn't something sentimental for the community. It wasn't, hey, this is definitely going to work because there's a sentimental connection here. This was the first one where we were taking and throwing a completely modern design, modern art type of design with geometric, abstract aspects. And we were, on the west side of it, we were incorporating a giant flower, but it's not just a painting of a flower. It's a macro version of it to where you're seeing what would be about a 1 inch, inch and a half section of a chrysanthemum blown up to 26 feet. And so you're seeing such a minutia of a flower that it's almost abstract to a point to where you have to look at it to realize that it's a flower. And so it wasn't just a beautiful floral pattern. It was something different. And so we were starting to put art that didn't have a sentimental connection for the older community onto an old building downtown. And that's what made me nervous.
Yeah. Understandably so.
But then seeing that community and that older community embrace it and bring us, like, they brought us food at certain points during the process, let us know that they were on board. And we actually ended up getting more encouragement from the older community as we were doing the building than we did anywhere else. And so one, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because it could have been, I don't know why they're putting this graffiti up downtown.
Sure.
Which that statement was made by a couple of people.
Sure.
And that's fine for a couple of people to think that way. But for the overall community to embrace it is wonderful. And so that's where, in my mind, okay, the idea of public art for art's sake is something that this community is going to rally around and is going to be excited about. And that if with this Marion Mural project overall, with all these artists coming in, if we focus on the art of it and to make it a true public art experience, then that's where it's going to become something unique and special. Because, and this is just my opinion, where some communities fail in putting up public artwork, is that they make all of that public artwork just about that community. The downside of doing that, it's amazing for the people in the community because the people in the community identify with it because there's civic pride there. But the downfall to that is that there's zero appeal for people outside that community to come and look at that because it doesn't connect to them in any way because it's not about their community. Which is what makes what we're doing unique in that it's a true, full artistic experience by coming and looking at all these murals. Because not a single one of those murals is just about Marion. Even on Little Egypt Arts, where it's about the people that are in that building, the people represented in that image who were associated with Little Egypt Arts aren't just from Marion. You've got people represented there in that image that are from around Southern Illinois. So even that one that is about that specific physical location is still about more than just Marion. And so that leads us to it being an overall artistic experience that can be a tourist attraction and bring foot traffic into the community and make art, once again, a draw for the downtown.
Absolutely. And I remember as we were painting the mural, that first mural at Union Street Arts, Reese, you were there helping paint. Shout out to you, man. Thanks for...
Reese was on the wall a lot.
Yes, we prepped that wall, Reese. Do you remember?
Yeah, we did the brick, the tuck point. Yeah.
Exactly.
Tuck point, the power wash, the base coat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. But when we were painting that, I remember we weren't even done, and people were already coming, taking pictures in front of the mural, doing TikToks in front of the mural.
Yeah.
A whole nother demographic that we were trying to appeal to.
Yeah.
That had a response immediately.
And it brought that, here's the, getting younger demographics, teenage through mid-20s, to engage in a small town and to be engaged with things in a small town is a struggle everywhere. And whenever that first one was going up, that was the not the first mural, but the first of the 2 murals of the concept for Union Street Arts. Whenever that geometric pattern hit that wall, that younger community immediately started coming out. And we're taking pictures and interacting with it. Like you said before, while we were working on the wall, while we were painting it, they're getting in between the scaffoldings and the ladders and trying to find a little 10-foot area that's at least half done that they can use as a background for their TikTok or for their Snap or for their Instagram post. And that was when you and I and Reese, because we were all on the wall on that whenever that first one happened. Mm-hmm. I was up on a scaffold. You were up on another scaffold, and you were on a ladder.
I think so, yeah.
We were all in the air, and there's people on the ground taking pictures. And we're all like, well, this is really funny because, hey, we're working here. But at the same time, this is amazing.
That's exactly what we were intending.
Exactly. And we hadn't even, the other wall that we had planned of part of that concept is the part that had the interactive part to it.
Right.
That we thought was going to accomplish that.
And it did.
And it did. And it does.
Yes.
All the time.
It's iconic.
The yellow umbrella that's floating there in amongst the purple rain. Shout out to Prince.
Yes.
Purple rain. What? That was what we thought was going to be the draw. But I would say as many people, if not more, take pictures with the other side with either the flower or with the geometric on that side than they do with the umbrella, because they want to create their own thing. That's the cool part about it, is the people that are doing the Instagram posts and the TikToks, they want to create something unique for themselves. And so they're not going to go for that obvious. They're going to find the pattern or the special place within the pattern or the break between the flower and the pattern that's going to be something unique that they're posting that other people aren't.
It gives them that creativity opportunity for their own selves to interact with that artwork.
And I haven't even thought of it that way. It creates and cultivates a creative atmosphere for people to create within our creation.
That's so cool.
And so to be able to see that, I can't tell you how many times I've been going through social media and an individual person will have their kids in front of it, or some, teenagers that work for me at the Civic Center, I'll see them posed out in front of it. And then, other businesses in the community have come down and done full shoots in front of them. And so it creates a backdrop for interaction within the community, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's before our big mural project with bringing other artists in came into play.
Right.
Once that happened, there's people taking pictures all over downtown all of the time. So when a homecoming dance or a prom's happening, not just Marion's, but any surrounding community, downtown is flooded with kids in tuxedos or suits and dresses taking pictures in front of these murals. Because they want to remember their final day, but they want to look cool while they're doing it.
Yeah.
And so we've become that destination. And I can't tell you how many times we just see photographers wandering around with people that they're taking their senior photos. And they're literally going from mural to mural to mural, taking these pictures. And so it's created this great environment downtown. And the things that we envisioned, we still haven't, we still have a vision to build out our website further to be more interactive. Right now, the MarionMurals.com website, there's a map of where all the murals are, but that's the extent of it. But the idea is that each page for each mural with the background for that mural will be built out eventually on that page. And the true, honest truth of that is that it's me that needs to do that, and I need to get off my butt and get it done.
Come on, Josh.
Yeah.
You don't have enough going on. I
don't have enough going on. I need to, focus on what my job is here and get that mural site done. But once the overall mural project, curated by Allison Hasler, with cooperation with myself, came about. And all of those murals went up over a few months, which was 8 additional murals. There's still one more in that project that's yet to go up. And we're waiting on building renovations to finish for that to happen. And that's one of Sean Vincelet's pieces. Then, we'll really, all of those pieces, all happening at once, became this incredible project downtown. And there's constantly artwork going up, and it's continued to, because there have been private commissions and or partnerships that have facilitated more murals and more murals. And I fell in love with doing it. I'm going to keep putting them up here in town. I've got a list of designs that are fully done and either waiting on something for the building to be done, or I'm waiting to find a place to do them. Sean Vincelet and I are still working on a date range for he and I to put up 2 or 3 within a few weeks, and to really knock out some more. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to putting up more artwork. I'm constantly designing them, just because, I did, as I was prepping for one of the Civic Center State of the Arts podcasts, the one with Dub Z, I was thinking about my relationship to hip hop music and rap music. And, one of the artists that was such a poet was Tupac Shakur. And there's so much poetry and meaning within what he was saying. And he was trying to break the mold of what hip hop and rap was then, for it to be a more positive thing. And that kind of clicked in my head, and I have no idea if it'll ever go up, but I started designing a Tupac mural with a message at that point.
Oh, wow.
And the message is really about life. Life isn't real, but your dreams are. And I'm probably adulterating that quote, but that's the general idea of the quote that just resonated so deeply within me, that life isn't real, but your dreams are. It so much speaks to, it doesn't matter what your current situation is. You live your life to follow those dreams and to continue to get better, to chase after what your dream really is. And I think that's such a great message. And Tupac gives such beautiful representation to both hip hop culture and to that community, that I think it would be a great asset to downtown. I'm almost done with that design, and I just got to find a place for it.
Anybody listening with a wall for Tupac,
right?
Contact Josh.
And so, that's one of many designs that I have. I've got a Martin Luther King design. I've got an Abraham Lincoln design. I've got a Frida Kahlo design. Because it's what I love to do within my design process is really focus on artists that have inspired me, people that have inspired me, people that have been influential, that have had thoughts that have changed the world. Because there's so much that can be gained from messaging within the murals for a community, to set the tone for a community, that can be something as simple as the All You Need Is Love mural. And that one came out of a time, and I almost forgot that I did that one. That one came out of a time, I designed that on the night of the 2020 election, and how divisive social media was on the evening of the results of that. And so that message to the community came out of that. And that was one where I had it designed and I just needed to find a place for it. And eventually we found the wall for it and went up. And it's another one where people are taking their pictures in front of it constantly because, we threw up the Beatles on Abbey Road with it as part of it, as part of the design, as part of the concept where people could interact with it. And they do. But people are taking a picture with that message, and that message is getting repeated over and over and over again. And that is setting a tone for downtown Marion in love. And I think that's so important.
It really is. Just having the whole art district, the positive messaging, the inspiration, the beautification, and the history tied in, it really makes for a unique setting, and art is the focus.
Yeah. And other people's murals in downtown Marion do the same thing.
Sure.
They spread that.
Yeah.
You look at the one on Perfectly Posh, and, it's this beautiful depiction of a woman with flowing colors and flowers and butterflies in her hair. And at the bottom, it has the phrase, "Your vibe attracts your tribe." And it's all about what you were putting out there to the world. And so that message curates love and curates creating your own community and being a part of a community. And again, that messaging is so important.
Yeah. And with the Doss's murals, with Kipto, having those outside artists come in, I think is such a unique and valuable part of the mural district, is having those outside artists that bring in, like you said, international eyes to this small rural town. People from coast to coast that all around the globe know about these artists.
Yeah.
And now know about Marion, Illinois.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah, because, Kipto put out his video about creating the mural in Marion, Illinois. And his video got thousands and thousands of views. And all of that is good for Marion because it's more eyes on us in a positive way, because we're curating these spaces for public art.
And people appreciate that. And I think going back to that original Union Street mural with the uncertainty of, is this going to connect with the community? And I think the community just saw what we were doing and just appreciated that beautification effort, that doing something for the community.
Yeah.
That public art. And I think just rallying around that and how to have a great appreciation for that. That, wow, they're doing something.
And there's something beautiful to be said about, as children in this community are growing up in this community, they're surrounded by expression of art. What's being done with the community theater groups, with Art Starts, with the Civic Center, them coming into the Civic Center to see movies, to see plays, to see musicals, to see different acts, to just walking through downtown or driving through downtown and being surrounded by public art. They're growing up in a world where they're being enveloped by public art. And there's something amazing to be said about that.
Long-lasting impacts. And hopefully one day they will bring their own efforts, their own creations and energy and life back into this area.
And the great part about it is they're seeing it done within their community and in a lot of the murals by people from within their community. So there's a certain aspect of, maybe I could do that because it's Josh from the Civic Center. It's Luke from Union Street Arts. They're painting these things. They're not professional painters outside of just doing these murals, but they're creating this public artwork that we get to experience on a daily basis. Maybe I can do that too.
It's that inspiration point
and then
that's so meaningful.
Here at Union Street Arts, you guys reinforce that through your summer camp, in talking about murals, in them experience murals, and them getting to be part of painting a mural at the end of it as well. And so there's further reinforcement of, I can grow up to be part of the arts within my community that's affecting my community. And there's a purpose behind that. And there's a curation of pure purpose behind that for the youth in the community in what we're doing.
And an identity as well. Whenever we finished that summer camp mural with the kids, they were all so proud to be the newest, youngest mural artist in Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
And they were just like, we can drive by this mural with our grandparents and our friends and say, we did that.
Yeah.
And again, that's bringing them here. It's creating those memories and an identity, a personal identity. And, we're really proud of all the work we've done, and we're proud of the work you've done, and a lot of the community. I mean, it's really been a rallying point, and we need more of that. We need more of that these days. We really do.
We do. And the murals were an amazing way in such a polarizing time with COVID and with political relations and civil rights in the country and around the world. I mean, you're looking at civil rights aren't just happening here. You're looking at protests being squashed in Russia, protests being squashed in Taiwan by overbearing governments. And yet, at the same time, as all of that's happening, people in Marion are taking pride in the public artwork that's coming together in downtown. And so it's creating a unifying point for a community in the midst of incredibly polarizing turmoil within the world itself. And there's an amazing quality to a feeling of actual community, interacting in real life around real life things on a wall, that they can come around and circle around and be together around. Even if that interaction's happening online, of people sharing these things out, that's a positive thing that is happening because of the artwork. And it's a positive thing that the community is seeing other people posting around it. And every time a new mural is happening or a mural is being posted, and people, almost every time I see a mural posted online, there's things in the comments going, where is that? I don't know where that's at. And it's constant rediscovery of places within downtown Marion.
It's great. And the long-term effects we can't quantify now, but one day I look forward to saying not only the social impacts, but an economic impact as well, that people that come again to look at them, to patronize all the restaurants, the bars, the local shops. And I just like this as a concept, the $1 million Marion murals that, over time, that people come to look at them, and while they're here, they go see a show, they go see the restaurants, and
the $1 million aspect doesn't come from what's invested in it.
Sure.
It comes from what it can bring into the community.
Exactly. Similar to the Civic Center itself.
Yeah. And it's the draw that it creates and the business flow that it can create that gives it that $1 million idea. Because all of the different businesses that can come out of more traffic flow to downtown will create that economy.
And just give it time.
And the concept of the arts as an economic driver is tried and tested over and over and over again. And so with seeing a rebirth of the arts and a refreshing of the arts coming out of the pandemic, similar to the Renaissance, in Marion is what will really move Marion forward. And is part of what's already moving Marion forward.
I think so.
But it's 50 years of emotional and supportive investment into the arts that's created that opportunity in the first place. This didn't come out of nowhere. This is a community that has deeply invested itself within the arts and put the arts at the heart and center of the downtown for decades and decades. And we're just now seeing the rebirth of the arts that can come out of that because of the investment that's been placed there by this community that far outdates any of us. That's the support of a community to curate the arts and to curate culture and to further develop cultural development and a culture of artistic investment within a small town community. And that's what's truly amazing.
Just thinking about the future and, we stand on the shoulder of giants and the future generations, what this could help potentially impact them. I think it'd be so cool. I remember taking field trips to the Civic Center, and we would walk sometimes. And, just I imagine kids walking through the Mural District now and leading them to the Civic Center and sort of being exposed to the whole trip and then getting into the Civic Center and then seeing the show. I mean, come on. I mean, how awesome is that as a kid?
Yeah. And it's the other thing that's happening is end of the year, we're doing guided tours with classes from the school district. 3rd and 4th grade classes are coming up to the square and we're meeting them downtown. We're walking them through the murals as one of their field trip outings.
Oh, cool.
And so it's more than just they're passing by a couple of murals on the way to the Civic Center. There's a couple of teachers that are seeing the value in, we can walk those kids around and show them each and every mural. And we haven't even talked about the biggest statement piece of all of them that you and I both worked on.
Right.
There's a mural that you can literally see as soon as you pull off the interstate. You can see just the top of it on a 5-story building. Because there's a mural that's 70 feet tall in downtown Marion.
That is a massive
It's a massive mural. It was a massive undertaking. It's another one that somehow we keep landing on that 10 days mark. But working with Sean, that took 10 days. And all three of us worked on it. Me, Sean Vincelette, and Luke. And, we had 3 lifts going at the same time. And we were all over that wall. But the coolest part about it is that it's patriotic. It's patriotic in a subtle way. It's incredibly patriotic because it's a representation of a statue that stands for all of the principles of our nation that sits atop the U.S. State Building, where all of the laws of the country are made. And so it's a representation of that statue that stands for the ideals of our country in representation. It's a symbol that's as strong as the American flag without being an American flag and an eagle hitting you in the face. And so it's an elegant statue on an elegant building that stands for these patriotic principles. And the sheer size and scale of it is the statement piece, because it stands and it actually looks towards the square. Even though it's not directly on a wall that is facing the square, as you're driving towards downtown Marion, you see it from the interstate over a mile away. And then as you get downtown, you get to see more of it and more of it and more of it. And then finally, as you're a few hundred yards away from the square, you can see it in its entirety. And it's this giant statement piece that lets you know that you're coming into a place that has murals. And then there's another one that we did that is this great little piece that is Life is Art, Live It. That was a co-design. I came up with a version of the phrase, but not the final phrase. Initially, it was Life is Art, Live It Beautifully. And I showed that to you, and I showed that to Sean Vincelette, and none of us were in love with it. We loved the sentiment, but the design and the phrase just weren't quite right. And I was, at that point, I loved the phrase itself. I didn't care about any other part of the design of it. But I knew we were at the start of something. And you jumped in with some insight and some design ideas. And then we presented it to Sean as well. And we ended up finally together, over the phone, all three of us together, fully designing this full concept to its final execution. And then you and I painted it. Morgan Griffith helped us for an evening.
Shout out Morgan.
And so she was our third set of hands on that one. And it was great to have her as part of that project. And then you and I finished it out that next day. And it was a quick pop-up mural with a great message, and it's on the southwest corner of the Marion Cultural and Civic Center. And life is art, live it is such a great mantra to be there for a building that represents the arts in a community. And at the same time, the design itself accents Kipto's mural that's around the other corner from it that scales 175 feet of a building lengthwise, horizontally. And so that is one of my favorite pieces. And in turn, we sent off and had stickers and magnets made for it because we felt like it was such a great sentiment. We've ended up just giving those away. The idea initially was to sell them, but from a promotional standpoint, it makes so much sense to just hand those out and to give them to people to share that sentiment. That also mirrors a giant, iconic 20-foot circle of a mural that is in downtown Marion that really kind of expresses a sentiment that's behind the entire mural project itself. And so that's become almost a signature phrase and statement and image for me. Because I've got the magnets on my vehicles, I've got the stickers on my cups and on my laptops, and it's the signature, not the image itself, but the actual phrase is the signature to all my emails now, to where I identify with it so strongly that it's becoming a part of my identity itself.
Wow. That's awesome, man. That was a special one. And you're right. It does embody and symbolize everything that we sort of stand for in this arts community and at the Civic Center as sort of being the rock, the draw,
And it's the first one that we did that we wanted to do as this exciting idea of a pop-up.
Sure.
To where it wasn't a long process that people got to watch. It was just there one day as a new piece of artwork in Marion.
Yeah.
Like it just magically appeared. And we really tried to do that 100% in one night. And the weather and the humidity didn't really cooperate with us. And so we had to finish it over a couple hours the next morning. But from it all went up within 16 hours.
Yeah.
And so we started at 8 p.m. one night, and by noon the next day it was done. Yeah. And so it still was this pop-up that just happened all of a sudden because it was in a place where people couldn't really see us working on it either.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden it was just there. And that was a really cool thing to be a part of.
Oh, sure, man. And it's almost as visible as the Citadel mural.
Yeah.
I mean, from a distance, you see Life is Art, Live It. You see the top of the Citadel coming down the State Highway 37.
Yeah.
You look off right to your right, and boom, that's what hits you.
Yeah.
And it's really awesome.
It's really cool as a statement piece for our downtown. And it gave us the experience to where I decided I wanted to do one other pop-up and actually do it as a pop-up. And so there's a Mr. Rogers mural in downtown Marion that literally just appeared overnight. It was 4 hours of execution. But what we learned was that because the paint doesn't dry as well in the humidity and the coolness of night, it had to be done in a way that none of the paint colors touched each other. And so whenever I went to design the Mr. Rogers mural, I was able to alter the design just slightly in a way that none of the actual colors actually physically touched each other. And in turn, it could all go up within 4 hours. And so literally, I think we did it on a Tuesday night. And so and it's on the way to a school with 600 children in it. So all of a sudden, on the way to school the next morning, Mr. Rogers is there with a great sentiment and a great message of, I like you just the way you are, and won't you be my neighbor? 2 iconic phrases from such an iconic children's entertainment figure in the country that they can speak to those children when they're on their way to school, or to literally anyone in downtown. And it goes back to that messaging of love, because that one speaks so much to loving yourself for who you are, just the way you are, and creates that message and that sentiment within the downtown. Again, going back to curating the vibe and the feel of the downtown Marion and of curating that community.
Yeah. Well, it's been amazing work. A lot of, so much positive feedback. Is there...
And you've been such a great partner in all of it. Even on the ones that you didn't directly paint on, you've been so supportive, because I've sent you the concepts and the ideas, and you've given me feedback. So you're a part of the ones that you weren't necessarily a part of physically painting. You've been a part of every one that's gone up.
Well, it's been, the community. It's, that's what it's all about, and it's just been an honor and a pleasure and, a complete joy in my life to be able to be a part of that process. And I'm looking forward to doing more, man.
Me too.
And the future of Marion Murals too, because we're not done yet.
We're not. We've got a bunch coming up. I talked about a couple of the concepts and a couple of the figures that I have in mind, and I haven't mentioned all of them. I haven't mentioned a number of designs that I have.
Sure. Keep them guessing. Keep them anticipation waiting.
Yeah, and they're going to happen. And there's going to be more artwork going up and more life coming into downtown and great messages going up in downtown. And those messages come from a place for me that was changed by these murals. My entire outlook on how I exist within the community as a person shifted from these murals. For some reason, I used to think that, sarcasm and dark humor was really the place where I thrived. And then during this process, with the impact of the very first one, I had this paradigm shift within myself that there's no reason for me to put anything out into this community other than positivity. Because during a time that's so divisive and polarized and polarizing, why be anything but a positive impact, and to put out positivity and to put out a positive message, and to you yourself be of positive effect on your community? That's the only way that we're going to change, and we're going to come out of such a polarizing time in a positive way, is if more and more people take on the idea of putting positive back into your community. And people are. They're making financial investments that are positive into our downtown. And affecting our community in a positive way.
Well, that's a true testament to your leadership, Josh, in this community and how important that is for this community. And, because we do need that. We need that right now. And it's a true sign of a great leader.
Well, but that wouldn't be possible without a community that's rallying around those positive things.
Oh,
I mean, it's a
absolutely.
representation of the community itself. Whether people are seeing it in the community at that moment or not, it is a representation of the community itself and what the community can be and really is and can be, circled around within our downtown, that there's so much positive here. There's so many good things here and good things that can happen if we're all positive and work towards it.
And work together.
Working together is so key.
Right. Teamwork making the dream work. It takes the whole community.
It does.
All the parts add up to the greater sum of it all. And, keep doing it, man.
I plan on it because I love it.
Yeah.
And that's a selfish reason to do it, but I really love it. But it's a selfish thing that potentially has some positive impact. So I'm more than happy to do it because I love every aspect of it.
Well, kudos to everybody involved in the Marion Mural project, from the artists, the people who put it on, the community itself, just the feedback. It's really been a trendsetter in the region. It's shown what can be possible, a point of inspiration, a beacon of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, I'm just looking forward because the future, we can write that story.
We are writing that story. And the story of Marion's being written right now from a town that had a dying, decaying downtown, historic downtown, which was a story all across America, to one that is being actively revitalized, re-energized, and revived into a thriving business community that focuses on the historic downtown itself. And that's thrilling.
Sure is. So much potential. And it's unique. And again, we just have to be thankful for those that came before and led the way, and those now doing the work, because it takes a lot of work to make this all happen.
There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of people doing it behind the scenes. There's a lot of people doing it through financial support, through logistical support. And there's a lot of aspects that aren't seen that are so incredibly important to all of it.
And I hope that we can have you and I and Sean sit down on a podcast one day and dive into more of the stories, because there's just so many stories for each mural.
There are.
That I feel like we need to capture those moments, because you're right, the story is being written now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an historic time in the country. It's a historic time in this area. It's a historic time in this town. And it's those historic moments that what comes next can really be shaped and formed. And I think we're seeing it have been done and to continue to be done. And
it being shaped and formed in a positive way, focusing on positivity and love and representation within our community.
I think that's only going to yield positive results.
It can.
And, bringing in that youth culture, bringing in the next generation, getting them involved and interested, and, a lot more work to be done, but we're doing it. And, I'm just looking forward to it. And again, I want to have you back on, Josh.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can dive deeper into the murals, more upcoming arts, more of your arts projects, and hopefully have Sean here as well. Without you and Sean, I would have never been involved in the murals, never.
Yeah, because you weren't planning on helping with any of it.
No,
you just were around it enough to where you started painting with us.
That's right. Sean said, if you stick around here long enough, I'm going to put a paintbrush in your hand. And sure enough, that's what happened. And it's been life-changing since then. And, any chance I can, we love to do it. And, again, more stories to be told. And, it's been a pleasure working alongside you on those projects, Josh.
It's been a blast. And it's been a blast getting to know you. And you mentioned me as a mentor, but there's a concept that I love that's reverse mentorship that anyone in business should constantly be relating to someone younger or entering the business that has different views and different ideas, just to be able to keep themselves in a line and to not be following behind the times. And that reverse mentorship has been incredibly beneficial for me.
You know, that's the best part, man. Like win-win, you know, growing together and impacting each other and being an advisor to each other in a way.
Yeah.
You know, and that just means so much. And, you know, looking forward to more projects and just being here in this community and, you know, keeping up the good work.
The arts will thrive. Life is art, live it, man.
That's right. Well, on that note, Josh, thanks so much for being on our podcast today.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure's been all ours, Reese. Thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Josh, we're going to have you back. Another episode. We become a recurring guest. More updates. Hopefully, if Sean's listening to this, we'll get us all together and we'll talk about it all.
I think we finally got him latched on the idea of podcasts. So, yeah.
Oh, good. Let's do it, Sean. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Josh, it means a lot.
It's been my pleasure.
And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. New podcast every Friday at noon, Central Standard Time. Give us a like. Follow the Marion Cultural and Civic Center on Facebook, Instagram. Check out the website. Support the shows. It's an amazing program. We're so lucky to have it. So thank you all, and we'll see you in the next one.